Quick, think of your favorite Disney character. What do you imagine? Ariel's red hair? Dumbo's big ears, perhaps? Maleficent's black robes? Many of the characters that we know and love today initially looked nothing like themselves. Welcome back to The Binger, guys. Over the years, the characters from Disney's animated movies have become, well, part of our world. We can conjure up images of these characters in our mind's eye as easily as we can our best friends. Yet, many of the Disney characters started out looking very different. Before they settle on a final version, Disney animators create concept art for each character, and often the characters go through remarkable changes between concept art and finished product. In this video, we're exploring how some of the most popular Disney characters evolve from initial conception to final film. Elsa? Is that you? Originally, our favorite Snow Queen from Frozen looked a lot frostier. While her sister Anna always looked kind of like the character we know from the movie, Elsa went through some serious transformation. That's because she didn't start out as Anna's sister at all, or even a good guy. In fact, at first she was Frozen's villain, and because she was a villain, she was older and a lot more confident. The filmmakers looked to Bette Midler for their inspiration for that version of the character. So the concept art for villain Elsa saw her donning fabulous gowns and looking completely sure of her powers. Plus, her blue skin let her wear that icy interior on the outside for all to see. Eventually, Elsa changed completely, an evolution that began with the creation of the song Let It Go. The song made the filmmakers realize that Elsa wasn't a villain at all, but someone who's been forced to hide from the world because of who she is. From that perspective, Elsa's a much more sympathetic character. So instead of the movie's bad guy, she ended up becoming Anna's isolated sister. And that wasn't the only change Elsa went through. Later concept art shows that for a while, animators envisioned Elsa with jet black hair. She sports a spiky updo that's got a punk rock princess kind of vibe. It's really cool. But as cool as it looks though, we have to say that Elsa's longer, softer blonde hair that we see in Frozen really does suit her. And we prefer her blue gown over the blue skin from earlier concept art. It's hard to imagine either of these discarded versions of the character belting out Let It Go with the same conviction. Even though she was created in 1959, Maleficent is still one of the most purely evil characters ever to appear in a Disney animated movie. And part of her evil power comes from her devastating regal look. In fact, as a whole, the movie Sleeping Beauty is one of Disney's most visually stunning, but it's Maleficent's character design that really puts it over the top. Things could have gone very differently though if the filmmakers had gone with early concept art for the character. In her original conception, Maleficent was an old hag with insect-like antennae. Instead of the self-assured, upright demeanor we're familiar with, this Maleficent is more bent. If anything, she looks like an old maid from early colonial America, not the force of evil that we're used to. Once Mark Davis, the animator behind classic characters like Cruella de Vil, came on board to design the character, things started to change. He quickly made Maleficent younger and more glamorous. In fact, in his initial conception of the evil fairy, she looked like a queen, spiky crown and all. Davis eventually settled on the horns, staff, and long dramatic robes that we love to cower at today. Yet he originally envisioned Maleficent's costume as red and black. To him, red represented the fire that defines Maleficent. Still, filmmaking is a team sport, so Davis had to give in to the whims of production designer Ivan Earl, who wanted Maleficent dressed in purple instead of red. And that's how Maleficent came to be the iconic character that we know today. Jasmine from Aladdin went through quite a few changes to become the princess that we met in the movie. Originally, Aladdin's story centered on his desire to make his mother proud, not to woo Jasmine. Jasmine was still a part of the film, but her function as a character was different. As a result, in her earliest incarnations, Jasmine was designed to be older and more independent. She's far from the bright-eyed character of the film. Instead, her look makes her seem more imposing. In a slightly later piece of concept art, she's given a complete outfit in blue and pink and is made to appear stuck up. Eventually, the character of Aladdin's mother was cut out of the movie entirely, and Jasmine's look started to soften, making her more accessible. After that, she went through several costume and hair changes. Initially, she was imagined with this amazing, aggressively pink outfit. While the color is a little hard on the eye, the nice thing about the dress is it's more authentic to Jasmine's culture. The Jasmine of the 1992 movie wears a very revealing outfit that wouldn't be acceptable in real life. This early costume, on the other hand, covers Jasmine up while still having an appealing design. Of course, Disney didn't stick with the look and eventually gave Jasmine the midriff bearing look that she's known for. Animators continue to experiment with their costume's color and hairstyle though. In one piece of concept art, she sports a straight, long hairdo that is a lot flatter than the poofy pony that she wears in the movie. And in other art, her outfit is colored in various shades of purple instead of the powdery blue that we're all familiar with. Clearly, it took a lot of work for Jasmine to become Jasmine. It turns out that Ariel from The Little Mermaid always had her signature red hair. The rest of her, however, went through some serious style evolution. In early concept art, Ariel isn't just different, her entire world is. Ariel is depicted as a vest-wearing, laid-back hippie. Her whole demeanor is different. It practically screams groovy, man. And apparently things are totally psychedelic under the sea. The early version of Sebastian the Crab seen in the image appears just as worried about Ariel as he is in the final film. His totally tubular shell designs undercut his concern though. Not to mention, it looks like he is imploring Ariel to care about something. Anything instead of trying to dissuade her from seeing the Sea Witch. If Disney had gone with this design for Ariel, the movie would have had an entirely different feel to go with this odd look. In later concept art of the character as a human, she's a lot closer to the Ariel that we know. Although this Ariel looks a lot more cartoony than the mermaid who appeared in the 1989 movie. Her hair is more exaggerated, her eyes are bigger, her skirt is fuller, and she's shorter, mostly because she has very short legs. By the time The Little Mermaid came out, the filmmakers had made Ariel look more realistic. Well, at least as realistic as a mermaid can look. In The Lion King, the villain Scar is manipulative and underhanded. Instead of directly challenging his brother Mufasa for the throne of Pride Rock, he uses duplicity to meet his evil ends. He plots behind his brother's back and uses others to do his dirty work for him. So, in the final version of the film, he looks like a weak, emaciated lion who isn't much of a physical threat. Scar's original appearance was very different, however. Early concept art shows Scar as a much more intimidating physical presence. His look is far more abstract and unrealistic. He bears sharp, scary teeth, but what really stands out are his green eyes and mane. Unlike the mane of a real lion, this image makes it look like he's wearing an all-black headdress, and just the slits of his eyes can be seen underneath. This Scar is someone you don't want to mess with. That theme is carried over into later concept art that shows Scar as a much bigger and more physically menacing presence than the Scar that we know. While the story of The Lion King was inspired by Shakespeare's Hamlet, it wasn't a direct adaptation like many of Disney's films. As a result, the story and the characters went through a number of iterations before the final film. One of those iterations shows Scar as a villain who is bold enough to take on Mufasa and threaten Simba directly. The artistic style is more realistic, which makes this version of Scar look a lot more threatening. Luckily, Disney decided to make The Lion King a musical. The movie still has grand Shakespearean themes, but at least the serious parts are tempered by some humor. Beauty and the Beast is one of the most beloved Disney movies of all time. But if the filmmakers hadn't gotten the look of the Beast right, audiences may have rejected the film instead of embracing it. And concept art shows just how many different versions of the Beast artists tried before they landed on the version seen in the 1991 movie. Supervising animator Glenn Keane looked to a variety of animals for inspiration for the Beast. Those different inspirations were reflected in the sketches of early ideas for the character. In one, he looks more like a gentlemanly gorilla. In another, he has the head of a mandrill. And in another, his animal features are so exaggerated that there isn't a trace of humanity in his face. Ultimately, King's design for the Beast was mostly inspired by the head of a buffalo. Although it did use other animal features as well, that version let the Beast appear just invitingly human enough that audiences could believe that Belle would fall for him. Dumbo recently got the live-action treatment in a splashy big-screen remake that saw the little elephant with the big ears rendered in CGI. In his first go-round in the movies in 1941, though, Dumbo was a cartoon. Today, it's actually pretty rare to find artwork from the movie. That's because, at the time, the artists weren't really aware of the legacy that they were creating. It wasn't until much later that preserving all of the artwork that went into a Disney movie became important. Fortunately, there are a few remaining examples of Dumbo concept art out there, and it looks like one of the big challenges for the movie's animators was getting the proportions of their titular character just right. In one piece of concept art, Dumbo's ears were on the smaller and pointier side. In another, his ears and forehead are disproportionately long. In yet another, his eyes and ears are huge, but the rest of him is tiny. Even with the different looks, there's one thing all of these approaches to Dumbo share. The underdog elephant is absolutely adorable. The Little Mermaid's Ursula is a menacing half-woman, half-octopus temptress. Her goal is to collect poor, unfortunate souls for her garden. Why? Who knows? What we do know, though, is that in the movie, she has her eyes set on Ariel, and she convinces the Little Mermaid to sign on the dotted line. Ursula is known throughout King Triton's kingdom as the Sea Witch, a threat to all mermaid kind. Yet, despite that, merfolk still go to her, and part of the reason lies in her look, which is the perfect combination of terrifying and seductive. It's hard to imagine Ursula as anything other than a villain with her full figure, black tentacles, and short hair. But it wasn't always a foregone conclusion that she'd look that way for the movie. In fact, Ursula wasn't even always an octopus. Artists came up with a slew of incredibly varied options for the character. Initially, her look was inspired by a scorpionfish, so she was tall and thin, and a mermaid with green hair and red fins. Later, she was reimagined to be bigger and a vampire. Initial designs imagined her with a spiky red mohawk and pointy teeth and ears. Believe me, it's a look that will haunt your dreams. Soon, Ursula started to look a little more like herself, but she wasn't an octopus quite yet. Instead, she was a blue-finned mermaid. Once she made the transition to 8 legs, though, it was her costume that still needed some work. Here, she looks more like a flamboyant undersea queen of hearts than a sea witch. Luckily, animators eventually dropped the loud ensemble for her more subtle look that we know from the finished film. It's that subtle look that's given Ursula the staying power that she's enjoyed since first gracing our screens back in 1989. So, did you like any of these Disney characters' original looks better than the ones that we saw in the movies? Oh, do imagine what that might have been like in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching The Binger, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.